Today and every day, September 23rd, 1983, should be about honoring the victims who were cruelly taken away from their families. So as I read the names of those victims, I'm going to ask families who are present here to stand there. We had a meeting last night in Kilgore PD. They were good enough to provide us their council chambers over there, and had 4 victims, but group here. Monty Landers, thank you. David Maxwell, Mary Tyler, Opie Hughes, and Joey Johnson. Thank you. Evil reached behind the pine curtain and gripped us here in a tangible way on September 24th of 1983, when those bodies were discovered. Texans, especially East Texans, forever remember where they were when they heard that story, because it marked the end of our innocence. There's no way to acknowledge everyone who contributed to this investigation from the very start all the way up today. Yet I must try as we gather here today. So first, we've acknowledged families, because for justice, to honor their loved ones, is the primary reason we gather here today. False narratives, unfounded allegations of incompetence, or worse, the inevitable finger pointing that comes from the confluence of so many different agencies, permit me a moment to highlight those men and women who conducted themselves to the high, and continue to conduct to the highest standards of our profession, by introducing some of them to you. Behind me, Danny Pirtle. He was the original lead detective from Kilgore PD, and he went on to a distinguished career, retiring as the sheriff of Rusk County, Texas. Currently representing those agencies, we have some representatives from Kilgore PD here today. Chief Hunter was with us last night with the victims' families, but he couldn't be here today, but he's got his assistant chief here, and we appreciate them. And our sheriff of Rusk County, Texas, Mr. John Wayne Valdez, is seated right behind me. In addition, we have former Kilgore PD and current Gregg County Sheriff Maxie Sarliano right here, and next county. Honored to have them all today. We also have Sheriff Corbel from Shelby County and his chief deputy, and we have Dee Dee, who is the district clerk there. I'm going to introduce some of these other folks as we go along. William Brown was the DA's investigator for 37 years, including back in September of 1983. I was honored to have him on my watch for about a third of his tenure. William's here. And George Keeney is right behind me, a little bit more difficult to see. But George, was in this institution for a very, very long time, and we appreciate him. And it's my privilege, really, to introduce a hero to those of us who are involved in this investigation, unsung hero. She's a woman of science. Her career spans the entire length of this investigation. She only retired very recently. She worked the original case. Then at the dawn of the first century, she went back and she got that napkin and box lid that had been in the evidence there at the, for all of those many, many years, 2 decades at that time, and she developed the DNA profiles from the napkin and the box lid recovered from inside the restaurant, and that eventually led to those convictions of Hartsfield, and Lorna Beasley's here with us. In a moment, Lisa Tanner will tell you about this case, and she'll reveal to you the identity of this third perpetrator known through biological evidence DNA. and I won't go into detail at this time, her tremendous contribution, or Missy Wolf's, who's worked with her so closely. The contribution from the Ranger Service over the many, many years have worked from Stuart Dow forward. We have our Saki grant Ranger, which is our sexual assault kit, investigative Ranger. He's on a grant through the federal government, and we know that unfortunately everything, including obtaining justice, is expensive, so we're grateful for those grant opportunities and those resources that are brought to bear. The Rangers have certainly devoted a great number of those, and Ranger Jason Shea is a large part of why we're here today. So we've got Ranger Jason Shea with us, and then seated next to him is Ranger Hamadi, who has also been running down some leads in regard to this case. I also want to acknowledge a Ranger who's not here, the Ranger Glenn Elliott. And, you know, he was known as a Ranger's Ranger because he really devoted himself to improving his craft. He became a leader in blood spatter technology in Texas, early leader, taught the classes. In fact, the blood that he saw in the restaurant stuck out and struck a chord with him, and he remembered it in detail all those many years later, seeing it early morning hours of September 24th of 1983. Ranger Elliott also kept a complete copy of, including the wanted poster after the DNA hits came back on Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton. They started looking for those names, and they found from Ranger Elliott's notes, Lisa Tanner and Mr. Wolf uncover at his house, that he had a wanted poster with both their names and both their Polaroid pictures on it, developed the very first week after the robberies and murders. So we owe a lot to him. His testimony was crucial, and there were so many obstacles to start in regard to this investigation because of some cost-cutting measures instituted in 1993 over in the city of Kilgore, and it's all different now. But at that time, the city was developing the rolls of film. And what happened was, despite Investigator Pirtle and all the other best efforts of them well photographing the crime scene, out of, I believe, over a dozen rolls, only one of them actually developed into pictures. So they had some difficulties from the start. At autopsy, fingernail fell from the belt loop of one of the victims, and despite another victim missing part of her nail, the pathologist, to credit, later admitted her mistake. She mistakenly picked that up and thought, well, that doesn't match. That must be from a perpetrator, and that sent us down a very lengthy wrong path. It was 2 decades of wasted resources from that, and then, of course, disproving it. And it led to a false narrative of corruption and cover-up, and the failed search for that fingernail gave rise to a story so enthralling, many people find that fiction much more compelling than the truth that brings us here today, and they just won't abandon it. And I'm appealing to those folks to hear the truth today. Also want to introduce, we've got some dignitaries on hand, and I appreciate them, too many to name, and once I start, I'll probably leave somebody out. So I've mentioned a lot of law enforcement folks. All of that, we've got our county court law judge here, Chad Dean. We've got DA's investigator, Craig Sweeney, current investigator. We've got clerk, Terry Pirtle Willard, and seated behind her, Randy Galter, Precinct 1 commissioner. And we've got our county clerk, Trudy McGill, right behind her, right behind her. And then in addition to that, back here in the back of the room, we've got our constable, Jesse Stewart, is present with us. We've got our JP5 judge, Judge Enlow, and y'all help me if I lost anybody, because I want to recognize y'all so that, which one am I missing? Oh, I'm sorry, Pat McCory. Now, you know why I overlooked Pat? Pat, bless his heart, Pat has helped us over with different legal. Was here at noon for this press conference, so I'm sorry I overlooked you, Judge. We appreciate you being here. Okay, anybody else? Thank you, Angela.
She's from Joanne Schaffner's office.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Nixon, right? She is the aide to Joanne Schaffner and her chief, I believe, here in the district, and we appreciate Representative Schaffner. I mentioned that because y'all honor the victims by being here, and in addition to that, over the years, from time to time, it has really taken, some people have had to weigh in. Some senators have had to weigh in before to get the resources that were necessary to continue the investigation. So I did want to honor all of y'all. So thank you, and thank you to all those county officials who are on hand, and all of you have answered, on my tenure, have answered the call that duty demanded. We can't control what crimes occur within the geographical limitations of Texas because it's a broken world. What we can do as Rusk County citizens and citizens of the state of Texas, uphold our sworn duty to do justice to the people of Texas, to the families of our citizens. Now, soon I'm going to introduce Lisa Tanner. She's going to summarize for you the convictions that are standing in the place. She's going to explain the forensics behind those and the science that identifies a third individual and brings us here today. After she completes her presentation, turn back up here, and I'm going to go through a packet of documents that we prepared for the press because, and I'll address why I'm going to do that. That's what we've deemed to be appropriate and public for public record, so that we wouldn't have to address each one of those specifically at a later time. When I took office 21 now, our current governor, Greg Abbott, was Attorney General. And when the grand jury returned the true bills for Romeo Pinkerton and Darnell Hartsfield, right outside these windows on the front steps, he joined us. And he proclaimed at that time that we would see the prosecution of these individuals through. I was next to him, and Lisa Tanner was already next to us, and as part of his commitment to do that, he is a very accomplished prosecutor to lead the team. She'd go on to a lot greater renown, have a lot more trials, and I would partner many other times over the years. But her partnerships in the courtrooms, from here and to Bryan, Texas, to Conroe, it's been the greatest honor of my professional career, and the greatest professional association. Now, she since left the Attorney General's office, yet she remains steadfast in her commitment to justice in this, as well as her duty as a prosecutor, because we can actually claim her as our own assistant district attorney, a title she's ever since step one of her involvement in this case. So I'm going to turn this over for Lisa's presentation and let her address some matters with you. Would y'all please help me welcome Lisa Tanner, lead prosecutor on her case.
It has been a professional honor of my life to stand in front of 3 separate juries in 3 separate counties to talk to the case. It is the great privilege of my career, and this will always be the most important thing I've ever done in my life. I'm going to tell you the same thing I told each of those juries in 2005, 2007, and 2008. And that is that this case, if you boil it down to its simplest form, the evidence has been there all along. It has been there since September 23rd of 1983, and it has been waiting. The evidence was always waiting for the science and the technology to catch up with it so that it could give us the answers that it held within it. All the way through these last 42 years, this case has flowed through the advances in technology that has provided to us. That started all the way back in 1995 when we were able to enlist, at a great deal of difficulty, we're able to enlist the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology in Washington, D.C. to take the case. And they took this case on at the very beginning of the most advanced DNA people in this world. They submitted that fingernail that we all know about to DNA testing, and they were able to tell that that fingernail did not match a suspect, any suspect, and it matched one of the victims. That obviously was a hard turn and changed the complete tenor of this case, but that technology allowed us to avoid a potential miscarriage of justice, and we should all be thankful for that. But that wasn't the end of things, because in 2007, we re-enlisted the same laboratory in Washington, D.C. to use even more advanced DNA technology on that same fingernail, and they came back and gave us more definitive proof that it was the fingernail of Mary Tyler. And it was not that of a suspect, and that was not where we needed to be going. Well, at that point, the case, after the 1995 determination, the case kind of went cold, I guess is the best way to put it, until the DNA technology further. That was in 2001. The DNA database, the offender database, the acronym being CODIS, came online, and with the help of Lorna and the help of George Keeney and others who worked on this case, we were able to determine that there was blood inside the Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant that did not match any of the 5 victims. And it matched, as it turned out from the CODIS database, Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton. That was in 2001 and 2002. As a result of that advancement with technology, we were able to go back and look and determine that they were in fact the prime suspects from the very beginning. And they were later, as you know, convicted. Romeo Pinkerton pled guilty in 2001. He had made a judicial confession that he was one of the people responsible for Kentucky Fried Chicken murders. And then later in 2008, Darnell Hartsfield was convicted because of those advances in technology. In the interim, there was another issue that came up. And you've heard bits and pieces about why we're here, but I'll tell you a little bit more about it. In 2003, my investigators working with me, Missy Wolf and Forrest Mitchell, and I were here in the Rusk County Sheriff's Office, and we were looking at physical evidence. And we were trying to make some determinations from the physical evidence, and it was that we learned that there was another DNA sample that nobody knew about that had never been discovered. And that was a DNA sample on the clothing of one of the victims. And we learned that it was not matching any of the previous suspects. That in 2003, and we kept it under wraps as we then tried to figure out whose it was. And I will tell you, you just make this stuff up when you're talking about this case. On September 23rd of 2003, the 20th anniversary of this crime, we received the call from Lorna Beasley from the lab who said, that DNA doesn't match any of your suspects. And I will tell you, we fully intended to indict Darnell Hartsfield and Romeo Pinkerton on that day before the call. And then we stopped because we knew we needed more technology. And we went to work, and we tried to figure out who DNA belonged to. We have, since that time, excluded 231 suspects to no avail. We continued to work, and we continued to hope that the science would get better. We eventually got science to the point where we knew that the person who left that sample was primarily of African American, which was Mr. Pinkerton and Mr. Hartsfield, and not the previous set of suspects from the fingernail, and then we proceeded to trial. All along knowing someday we want to find out whose DNA that was. And we kept testing as much as we could, but we had to be very, very careful because we were talking about a very, very old sample. We were talking about not a huge sample, and we had to make sure that we didn't use it all up, because we didn't want to use it all up with decent technology and then find out later there was better technology that would have given us the answers. So we waited for the technology. This past year, the Texas Rangers came in to help us. The Texas Rangers have a grant called the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, the acronym grant, so that they can look at old unsolved cases. And we will forever, and I say this on my behalf, on Michael's behalf, and on behalf of our friends, the family, so that are over in the jury box. We will forever be grateful that they took the lead, and the Rangers took the lead to do genealogy testing on that DNA sample from the pants of our victim, Opie Hughes. That started this past year, and we have been in touch with the Rangers for this past year. And 2 weeks ago, we learned that they had narrowed it down through a variety of genealogical databases that y'all don't want me to explain it all to you, and I don't really want to have to explain it all to you because I am a lawyer, because I don't do science. But there are genealogical databases that allow to narrow this down to the DNA of one of 3 brothers. Over these past several weeks, there have been trips to California. Been a great deal of work that has been done, and in the last 2 days we've been able to narrow it down and confirm, or maybe the last week, but we've been able to confirm that the DNA is that of a man by the name of Devin Riggs. He was born on February 2nd of 1953, and he died on October 8th of 2010. So he is no longer with us, so we will not be having another Kentucky Fried Chicken murders trial because of that, but at least now. I'm going to let Mike tell you more about Mr. Riggs' background, but that has been those of us who know this case and have worked this case has gnawed at us and gnawed at us. I will tell you that it has gnawed at me since I learned of it, because I thought, how in the world did we miss him? We've eliminated 231 people. How did we miss this guy? I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, it's important before we get into the specifics about Mr. Riggs that we know he was in this area around the time of these murders. We know that because he was arrested on November 13th of 1983 in County for an attempted murder that he went to prison for. And that occurred right then. So we know he was in this area a period of time. What we've learned since the investigation is that immediately upon getting out of prison in around 5 or so, Mr. Riggs left Texas and he went to California. And he spent the remainder of his years in California, so he was not on our radar screen because of that. Secondly, his offense here in Texas goes back to showing you how things were so different back then. That would have put him into the database had he committed that crime in recent years. There was no database back then, so he was not in our DNA database in Texas. Additionally, Michael will tell you more about his background back then, or excuse me, once he moved to California, and none of the offenses for which he was convicted or arrested in California put him into Texas. He was in no database anywhere. And so that is, I think, why he didn't get onto our radar screen over all of these last 12 years. But now we know it's him. They have excluded his 2 brothers. There was one brother who died before the Kentucky Fried Chicken murders. But we now know that based on genealogy testing, that is our 3rd suspect. So yet again, we've gotten to the point where the forensics has advanced enough where the evidence has finally answered the question we've had, who that last person is. And we still have some work to do. I'll let Michael tell you more about it, and I'll certainly answer any more questions about all of this evidence. And if there's anything I missed, please let me know, Mike. But from there, I'm going to let him tell more about Mr. Riggs.
I'll share with you what we've been able to determine about Mr. Riggs, and we're still investigating that. There's a lot of the men and women behind me are still working on that. However, we wanted to go ahead and now because we wanted to make sure, as word might slowly get out, that these families heard first, and that's why we met with them last night and actually in constant contact with them throughout the process. And so we wanted to address that really before the holiday season started. There's more work to do, but having told you that, I'm also going to furnish to anybody from the media who wants one of these little data devices, and it's got what information we do know. Now, I don't want to, the reason I'm doing that is because we're a very small office, as you know, and we'll be inundated with all the open records requests. Plus, in these cases never end anymore. So as long as somebody who is convicted is alive, we anticipate from risk. So because of that, I can't just release everything carte blanche. So we have made a disc of what we believe that we can release, and let me start going through that with you. I'll put it up over my shoulder here. This is a summary of Mr. Riggs' criminal history. It really wouldn't be appropriate to give you his criminal history under Texas law, but you can see here he's arrested for burglary in Los Angeles in 1970 on 2 different occasions. After that, robbery in Los Angeles and Inglewood, California, which is near the same area. We've got loitering in a school area. We've got attempted murder and robbery in 71. By 72 in Sacramento, we've got a robbery and assault. In 76, he goes to prison in California for a 5 years to life. But then he paroled in 1977. Of course, we've got the murders in this instant case in September 23rd of 1983, and then thereafter in Shelby County, about 7.5 weeks later, we have the attempted murder and burglary. We were able to get a copy of the newspaper account. Ranger Shea was able to furnish one from the Longview News Journal at that time, but we also got one from the Shelby County newspaper there in Center that recites that he ended up shooting other, just as Ms. Tanner told you about, and really what's instrumental about Sheriff Corbel being here today is Sheriff Corbel was a trooper at the time, obviously before he took office, and he ended up, like in most counties, where he ends up responding, and he worked that case. So it just we've been so blessed by so many things that went our way, and that didn't go our way. I just happened to be down there trying to get information and was really getting a dead end, and the sheriff overheard me, and he immediately came up and told me all I ever wanted to know at that time that I could handle about Billy Ray Riggs and Devin Riggs. And originally what we had, and you'll see from this as well, is that we had the genealogy through Ranger Shea's work narrowed it down to 3 brothers, these Riggs brothers, Larry Riggs, Billy Ray Riggs, and Gerald Riggs, and Devin Riggs, I'm sorry. And so we know now it was Devin. Now, thereafter, you see, right after he gets sentenced to 3 years, actually what he went away on was aggravated assault, but he was initially charged with attempted murder. He leaves TDC in 1984, and he's paroled, but pretty quickly he's out in Los Angeles. He commits a battery in 1996, and then he's formally discharged, and then he's deceased in 2010. Now, also included Billy Riggs. That is the person that he shot. They were living together down there in Timpson. And you know some other people who were living in the residence with him. And when the sheriff went down there at that time, trooper, it was pretty easy to figure out that there was no actual hunting accident, as Billy told the Nacogdoches Hospital. It was actually shot as a result of the 2 of them having a shootout. And a number of shots were exchanged, I believe over 15. The sheriff worked that case, and while he was down there, he was noticing in the yard a whole bunch of shells of vehicles, including a van, cargo van. And so because of that, he went back and got a warrant and came back and searched and went through all of those stolen goods, and it was just full of stolen goods, as you can see from Billy Ray's. Then Billy Ray, well, a while after this, he ends up in 1990. We discovered that he is the subject of a number of documentaries and things where he out there in California and was eventually convicted of that. And so this is just a copy here of that original shooting, like 7.5 weeks after these murders, from the newspaper there in Center. These are the bookend pages that the sheriff provided me. Very helpful, because that gave us some leads to go to the people we track down to try to find more information about Devin Riggs. And I asked the sheriff about a photo, because we still had not seen a photo of him at that time. We found one with his pin packet that we'll show you here in a minute. But the sheriff pointed out to me, as we all forget, about it was 1983. As she said, it doesn't go in these databases because there wasn't any DNA science to collect that. But he pointed out to me it probably would have been a Polaroid, and it would have been attached to it, and it's probably fallen off. But as a result of that, we got enough information to go over to the district clerk, Ms. Green, and she took a lot of her time, and she went and found us some files, and so we got the full file from that shooting incident that we included. Now this is the actual pin packet from that conviction. This is Devin Riggs. This is the photo we've got of him from his pin packet, and she was able to get us that full court file, and then when she got us court file, in addition to that, this is just a copy of what I was telling you about a minute ago, that case where Billy Ray Riggs was convicted out in California. I'm going to run through it because when we went, the district clerk Green got us that court file, we found something that each county's a little bit different, and we normally wouldn't put the confession of the subject in when we had a conviction, but here they had the confession of Billy Ray Riggs, because I told you the sheriff went with a warrant and went through all that stolen stuff. There's a great amount of stolen stuff, and Billy Ray Riggs gave him a confession, and Billy Ray Riggs talks about how him and Devin committed a number of burglaries, how they broke into a building belonging to a local resident there outside of Timpson. They broke into their toolboxes of construction companies, what it appears to be, and that he took a Colt 357 revolver. And the last time he saw that gun, Devin had it. And of course, you know from the KFC cases that that's the general class of weapon that's used here. And then he talks about in May of 1983, back before how Devin and him drove to Marshall, and they went to a shopping center up there and stole and then in addition to that, they went to a football game in Jacksonville, and they stole a van there. So we obviously believe that cargo van was used. There's some witnesses involved with that. They stole some other things, and what was difficult too was that they this is that statement I was telling you about, is of course they're stealing all these things in Timpson and Shelby County. It's a small county. It's hard for them to move those items down there. So what they end up doing is he recites that they ended up going all over. They went to Dallas, to Houston, to Shreveport, to Jacksonville, purportedly in an attempt to find Volkswagen parts, but clearly they were trying to move some of this stolen merchandise that they were stealing. So we've got him all over the East Texas area during this period of time. These are court files that we have from down there as well. Now, in addition to that, in the back of this packet, we also, somewhere in here is the card from the investigator out in Englewood who came out and was looking at Billy Ray's file after that murder. We've also got the emails where we redacted some of the names in the emails, but it gives you all the work that Ranger Shea and the Ranger Service did, because when they get this back, that it's going to be one of these three brothers, well, actually the full brothers of Billy Riggs, they start going down that path. One of them deceased before this. Larry and Devin and Billy Ray were all alive at the time of this, so they start then they were able to get some DNA from Billy Ray's from the medical examiner when he died. They're all deceased now. Larry, they were able to get a relative. We blacked out those names that were used there to try to protect those people who are innocent other than related to these individuals. And you can see by the process of elimination that what we end up with is when I get to it here in a minute, that's just reciting that Devin has passed away in 2010 from natural causes there in Los Angeles. And this is when the Rangers sent us the actual email where he says Devin Riggs is a person. And he's asked to do a person that he's talking about from Bodie Labs up in Virginia. They've been instrumental in all of this. And he talks about we're going to proceed to the next step. Now, The next step, the ranger suggested and wanted that I contact Mr. Pinkerton. Wouldn't be appropriate because he's got an attorney who is there to advise him about writs and other matters. So I did contact the attorney, and essentially I told him we're not going to make any sort of agreement. He's got 5 life sentences. He deserves every day of it. However, if he were willing to provide the victims what comfort it might provide and address these matters with us, I would be hard-pressed not to admit before that he declined that request. So we did pursue that avenue. We've tried to pursue a number of avenues, and I've got that recited in there, and there's the original list that we got. Now, in addition to that, we do have, just a little short, there's another press release today reciting what Ms. told you. And then we've got the actual Bodie Labs report that we've redacted some of. The pertinent part is in there. It's a little bit difficult to read because that's the kind of science. I mean, the nature of DNA is they're matches, but they're matches by exclusion. However, all of us become very proficient in this, and we represent to you that there is no doubt. There's no doubt today that Devin Riggs, that's his biological material, that semen from one of the victim's pants, and we're certain enough that we're absolutely certain he would be convicted if he were alive and be tried. Now, we are going to take questions in just a moment, but what I'm going to ask is the victims' families, if they want to go ahead and leave, I'm going to go ahead and let them leave if they want to. If they want to stay, if they want to participate and answer questions, they can. But if they want to go ahead and leave, I'm going to give them that opportunity right now with Bruce, our victims coordinator. And as I said, we'll pass these out at the end of this process. So respectfully, don't bother sending me open records requests. I'll object to turn over anything other than this because we expect that we might very well have one of these writs, and in addition to having to be protective of the information, because of that, we don't want to do anything that would any way undermine anything like that. Okay. Thank you all for standing up. He's going to walk them out.